that the Chinese Communist Party stands for. Bob will present the vote of thanks.
Thanks, David. I think it's very fitting we should be holding this forum here tonight just after the Olympic Games have been held in a place where a country wasn't fit to hold them, really, communist China. I say communist China because remember there are two Chinas. There's Free China, the Republic of China, otherwise known as Taiwan, that's a civilised parliamentary democracy. And there's the mainland China, which is run by a renegade bandit gang of freaks and monsters called the Chinese Communist Party, who seized power by force in 1949. They've never been elected by the Chinese people, have no legitimacy, and have no right to sit on the UN Security Council. You ever wonder why we have all these calls for democracy in Zimbabwe? Why we invited Iraq to give them truth, justice in the American way that costed 600,000 lives so far, I believe. When, let's face it, Saddam Hussein's Iraq was a paradise of sanity compared to the excesses of the Cultural Revolution. And while we have trade sanctions on a titular little country like Fiji just because they had a military coup, and Burma, when there were no calls for trade sanctions on Communist China, didn't Communist China actually arm the dictators of Burma? Isn't Communist China armed with a very nuclear weapons of mass destruction? That's the reason for invading Iraq. Is there any difference between the Chinese Communist Party's invasion of Tibet and the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait? There's a much more of an argument to say Kuwait is a part of Iraq than there is for saying Tibet's part of China. The reason is the kind of government they have in Communist China, an all-powerful one-party state and a controlled media, is the system they have in store for us here. If that sounds far-fetched, Hawke, after one of his many election victories in the 1980s, said the Labor Party will one day become the natural party of government. Now that's not a one-party state, what is? We don't have a free media because Channel 7 recently refused to run an ad condemning the occupation of Tibet because they had exclusive Olympic rights to the Olympic Games and didn't want to upset the Chinese Communist Party. And remember, the powers that be in this country, who want to be so palsy-walsy with the Chinese communists, actually sent 500 Australians to die in Vietnam to fight communism, which proves they'll sacrifice their sons' lives, or preferably someone else's sons' lives, for a cause. But that cause is going to cost them financially. It's a different matter. Lang Hancock once said he thought his name was on the list of people to be exterminated by the communists when their great day of revolution came in Australia. But he mocked the Romanian freedom fighters who overthrew the communist dictator Ceausescu as starry-eyed idealists, because he had a business deal going with Ceausescu. Capitalists in the West are the biggest friends the Chinese Communist Party has. They're only against communism in their own country. If it happens in another country, they love it. Who wants to do business with a country that has trade unions going on strike, where there's a free press chasing up issues like pollution and corruption, where you can do business with a place that has a state-controlled media and uses slave labour? One of the greatest apologists for Communist China over the years has been Malcolm Fraser, a well-known international socialist, and what people call the best Labour Prime Minister Australia never had. When Mao died, Fraser said Mao had achieved great things for his country. Malcolm Fraser, as Prime Minister, also continued to recognise the genocidal Pol Pot regime backed and armed by the Chinese Communists long after it was overthrown. It was Malcolm Fraser who was Minister for the Army when Australian troops were first sent to die in Vietnam to fight communism. Engaging with Communist China economically does not bring freedom and democracy there. After the Tiananmen Square massacre, someone said to one of the executives of a company that did a lot of business in China, it must be hard doing business there now. And he said, no, after Tiananmen Square, it's easier doing business, because now everyone does what they're told. And now we're finding the streets ice creams that are made in China and sold in Australia, probably contaminated with the melamine plastic that's been killing babies who have had the contaminated milk powder in China. A fact that was known before the Olympics started, but the Chinese Communist Party hushed it up. But because of scandals like this, I believe all people of goodwill are beginning to understand the Chinese Communist Party is a crumbling edifice. We only have to kick in the front door and the whole rotten structure will come tumbling down. Which is why I have no hesitation in moving a vote of thanks to our three speakers tonight, Christina Zhu, Timpa Dugdak, and one very, very brave woman, Mrs. Jennifer Zeng.